Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Talent Talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, what would all of you like more of? Quality, quality, quality.
Go back, but they're also starting to, invest and innovate and grow.
That's where we should really be focusing instead of the bright and shiny.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of Talent Talks. And, today sort of feels like a monumental day for me as a host of like a video and podcast kind of deal. There's some people in our lives that although you've never had the opportunity to sit down and have a beer or whatever you partake in, you feel like they are part of your ether. And so today with me, I have literally the pioneer of internet sourcing for candidates, Shally Steckerl with me. Shally, can you say hello to the crew?
Hello. Yeah, I'm properly embarrassed. Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm not done, right? I'm not done. So I have to tell everybody like this story. So most of you know, I was at AT&T for a very long time. I had lots of people come in and out of my sourcing teams, Rachel Book, Amy Beth Hale, right? Like, as these like really power sourcers come out of my group. And always the answer was, I would ask them like, how do you know all of this? And they would be like, Shally, right? So I go to an ERE and you're there, right? And so I do your thing, right? Like I learn the things. I am dangerous. I am still who my friends go to find stuff, right? Just because of what you taught me. And that was in
Nobody
a very
owes
short
you any
amount of
money.
time. But really, I mean, like you are really a pioneer in our industry. And so before we even get started, and we're going to talk about a variety of things today, but before we ever even get started, just a very heartfelt thank you to a leader that was a recipient of the beauty that you embody in others and the skills in which you have taught over your tenure.
Thank you.
You're one in a million. So you're doing stuff.
Time to buy lottery tickets.
Yeah. Well, if you win, you got to share. I don't know. Most of my listeners know I love to gamble. So just so you know, if you win because of this hot tip, I want in on that.
You got it.
So you're still in the industry. You're doing things. We see stuff from you occasionally, but I'm not sure how many of our listeners really have an opportunity to understand what you're focused on right now. Do you have a few minutes just to talk through what is power sourcing and kind of what are you doing now?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you believe that after a quarter century, 25 years? Good question. So it's funny because a lot has changed, but a lot also has not changed. When I started this 25 years ago, I was solving the problem of I needed to find people that my colleagues, my peers weren't finding because I was the new guy and they were able to, they were eating my lunch. They could talk to candidates that they already had relationships with. They knew how to work it. And this was, pencil and paper days, old school. So I had to innovate or die, basically. It was a commission environment. So I innovated. And along the way, I guess I stumbled upon two of my major flaws. One of them is this kind of endless need for input and curiosity that I'm always looking for input. I'm always looking for things to process. And the second thing is this disease that is the need to teach and share. And there's a little bit of altruism sprinkled in there, which, a lot of people have counseled me against and said, well, Shally, you're giving too much away, et cetera. But I started with those two things in mind, and I wanted to solve this problem, and I solved it. In 25 years later, I'm actually still solving the same problem, but the setting is different. So now I'm not finding people that other people can't find. I can still do that. And there's other people that can do that. I'm not the only one that does that. And I continue to innovate ways to find people that nobody else innovates. But the problem I'm solving now is I'm able to get to those people. I'm able to engage those people in a way that isn't being done elsewhere. So the problem I'm solving is, you've heard of omni-channel outreach. And, in the marketing industry, it's about broadcasting to a wide network that is, much more specific with programmatic advertising. You're reaching out to the right channels with smaller, less costly messaging that has higher impact because it's more accurate. But that's still only the broadcast side. What I'm solving is the opposite side of that. So at the front end of the sourcing process, we have the most critical point, which is the intake. I've built a chatbot and an ability to tease out the intake information that a sourcer normally asks that is not part of the standard recruiter intake. That allows us to create machines and robots that can go out and find people that nobody else is finding. But that's just the finding part. The second part is the automated outreach and the automated inbound. So the secret is that we have a system that allows us to track responses. So when we reach out, we first identify when and where someone was most recently most active. You can find all their social media destinations. You see that they're on Facebook and on Twitter and on Pinterest. But which one are they actually using, and which one are they actually using recently? So our cadence begins in that channel. We reach out to them that way. And if we can't find one, then we go through our regular process: email, voice, text, social media, etc. But then the machine is able to respond in channel. And that's the key. When an individual that we're trying to contact replies via a text message, the machine, the robot, engages in that channel. If they reply on Facebook, it engages in that channel. We don't redirect them somewhere else. We don't try to send them to an application. We literally engage at the moment of contact. And then the robot this is not artificial intelligence. It's still very much logic, and it's still if this then that. But the robot answers as many questions as it can. When it hits a snag, and inevitably it will eventually exit out of the automated program, it then schedules a meeting because it has access to our calendar. And then now a human kicks in and we have an appointment. We talk to the candidate. The rest is history. So that's the innovation. So really, the short answer to your question is automation. It's cognitive and robotic process automation.
So just sort of a theme with you throughout your career and as we've known each other, like it's always doing things smarter with less effort, kind of like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so
because I'm very lazy. I'm extreme. You basically identified that. Yeah, so that's my third weakness then, right? I'm altruistic. I'm immensely curious and very lazy.
I just call it being cognizant of your free time, right? Like that's the corporate way to say lazy. I'm very cognizant of
work-life balance.
My work-life balance. Yeah. So very true things and very helpful things. So, at AT&T, and as I look at Joveo and our customers, we have a variety of different roles. Do you see this fitting clearly for one type of position, like more entry level, or do you see it work across the continuum? What's your observation there?
So the parent company of Power Sourcing, the division that I'm in, is called Aspirant, and they're a management consulting firm. In that management consulting firm, we have 12 practice areas. My boss, Patty, is the leader of the talent strategy and acquisition practice area, and I lead the sourcing strategy, the innovation and sourcing strategy practice. I was having this conversation with her actually very, very recently, in fact, right before this call. And the question is, does this solution lend itself more to high volume, or does the solution lend itself more to the needle in a stack of needles headhunting, where you want to identify the really rare, obscure talent that is hard to find, hard to reach? And I have to tell you, it works in volume because it would be nearly impossible for humans to engage in all of these channels simultaneously in a way where we can be responsive quickly enough to where the experience is not diminished. The robot, as much as I would not, if I was a candidate, would probably feel a little weird about talking to a robot, the robot is not pretending to be a human. The robot is simply allowing the conversation to take place in a much more rapid way, which gives satisfaction to the candidate. The human couldn't respond that fast. We could if we only had 10 jobs to fill. But if we have to fill 400, it's not possible. So it works in high volume. It also works in the low volume because in that case, we're reaching out to a lot of different people in order to identify somebody that might be a good fit.
Right.
So it really is. the age old, I think it was a Mythbusters episode where they said, can you find a needle in a haystack? And, they were like, oh, the easy solution is use a magnet. A magnet attracts a needle. What if it's a bone needle? Okay, that's a little different. My problem is I need to find a needle in a stack of needles.
Right.
So I'm not distinguishing the one thing that stands out. I'm distinguishing the specific size, shape, color, and feature of this one needle that's interspersed with all these others. They really look very closely alike. And if this sounds familiar to most recruiters out there, it's because this is the problem. So on the high volume side, it works for that reason. And on the high value, high critical need, it works. Where it doesn't really apply that well is in the intermediate spaces in between, where the relationship is key, where recruiting is all about the relationship. And there's still those types of roles where recruiting is, the key to the relationship. So it's kind of solving these two very difficult and very different challenges the same way. And it applies to both. Mm-hmm. It isn't solving the problem of, you have some applicants, they're not all great, but you can get through the 200 applicants and figure out which ones are good. And it doesn't solve that.
So it's really interesting. So if listeners of the show know that I am just traditionally anti-chatbot, right? Like I made it a point. We had it at my old job. It was fine. And it was fine. It was fine. Like, I don't know another nicer way to say it. It was fine. It was okay.
It worked.
It works.
But it did what it was supposed to do.
Sometimes, right? Like it sort of did, but what it mostly did was it queued everybody that was waiting for a response on their application, right? Like, wow, they were already queued in my ATS. I didn't need them queued in my chat queue too. But that, right? Like, but I think that it added transparency to a business problem. But I think that this is different, right? Because you're not trying to be personal and make it seem like you're talking with a recruiter. You're literally facilitating a task that in both situations, the candidate can identify with that, and you're being transparent on the need, right? Like, so I think that adds a different level of value from my perspective, right? Like, you're not trying to convince
friction.
Yeah,
it's removing friction. It's expediting is what it is. So really the purpose of automation is to alleviate tedious, repetitive tasks. It's to expedite workflows that could be more accurately, more rapidly done by a machine. If it doesn't fit that description, then it really shouldn't be automated. If you need constant human supervision for it to work, then it's not really ready for automation yet. So that's the big misconception that people have about automation. They either feel like it's the science fiction, tell the robot to make me lunch and it does everything, which doesn't exist. Right. Or they feel like the robot is so dumb that if you asked it a question, it's going to say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question, which sounds like every Alexa conversation I've had in the last 2 weeks. So, but the reality is actually in the middle. Some problems, some challenges, some friction can be alleviated with automation, even as simple as, for example, Microsoft Power Automate Desktop, which is a free app that comes with Windows, or Auto, the Automator in Mac, that allows you to do a lot of the pointing and clicking that you normally would tediously do. And think about it. This is the part of your job you don't like.
Yep.
You don't really want to do. If there was a way for you to automate scrubbing your toilets at home, you probably would do that.
Yeah, quite honestly. So we built bots at AT&T on my team. That was one of the roles of my team, was to build bots to automate the candidate funnel. And it was one of the coolest, most interesting things that I've ever learned. And I walked away from that experience. We did a lot, right? Like we did a lot. We moved candidates based on rule, like all things that our ATS wouldn't do. We programmed bots to do those things. Mm-hmm. And when I walked away from all of it, Shally, and I think that that's sort of like the point you're making here, what I walked away with is that there was nothing Herculean happening. It was really simple tasks handled by a set of rules in a timely way that improves the process for everyone.
Yep.
It makes it easier for recruiters to do their job. It makes it easier for candidates to navigate the process. And what we found, which was sort of our hypothesis, which is why my team took it on, was that the more you could remove friction from any section of your process, the better your flow through rates and your conversion rates became in that section of your funnel, right? The more friction you remove,
That's right.
like most of the people aren't dropping out of your funnel, or you're not removing them from the funnel because of an active thing. They were happening passively because of just muck. So
And this automation that we're creating basically is not about filtering through the applicants. It's about putting people into the workflow that should be there. And we can't just, add 500 people to the workflow and expect, if I reach out to you and you respond to me within 5 minutes, and then it takes me 3 days to get back to your response, that's not good, right? But that's kind of what happens, right? You send out an email to 500 people and 20 of them respond, and sometimes you don't get back to some of those people. Well, that's not sending the right message. So it's removing that. Let me give you a little bit of an analogy here. So from the time that the pyramids of Egypt were built to the time of Cleopatra was a much longer span of time than the time from Cleopatra to today.
Not crazy.
Think about that.
I know.
So let me continue that analogy and say this. We started walking to get somewhere. Then we used, horses. Then we had wheels and we got there faster. There's really not much difference between what we started doing, which is walking, and self-driving cars. It's still the same thing.
I agree.
So is automation doing anything Herculean? Not really. It's just allowing us to focus on other things that are probably, look, if you're the kind of person that enjoys a countryside drive, you're not going to want self-driving cars, or you're not going to use them. But if you're the kind of person that needs to get from here to there and would rather have 20 calls between here and there, you're better off driving Uber or a self-driving car, because you can get other things done during that time. You're not enjoying the ride.
Yeah, and that sort of brings to the reality of us, a recruitment team at this point in time, right? Like in going through COVID, probably getting down some headcount. We all know, we all have friends that got laid off, right? Like the people weren't hiring and things were sort of changing. As you look at rebuilding that and forming the new normal, I think that leaders have to be aware of the opportunity of automation and what a company like Power Sourcing could do to help those, right? Like there are lots of pieces that can keep your skilled employees doing the right work and still make the process better for everybody, better conversion rates, better experience for the candidates, and then, obviously better ROI from you as a talent leader. So I think there's a lot here. It's interesting. So I had a whole list of stuff I wanted to talk to you about. Like I wanted to wax philosophic about where we've come since we started recruiting in the 90s, because I will also, we kind of started near the same deal. So would you mind coming back and just doing a whole nother episode with me? Can I beg you for that?
Let's do it. This is fun. I'm
Excellent.
all up for it. I'm game.
Well, seriously. So viewers, listeners, if you are just on the audio side, Shally is a pioneer. He's always thinking about the right way and the best way to get the most out of your work, right? Like whether that's getting the most out of your sourcing work, or that's, making the most of the candidates that you want to engage. And if you have this as a business problem, Shally, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, easiest is to go over to powersourcing.io. There's a contact form there. But if you want to connect with me on social media, go to shally.card. That's CARRD.co, and not .com. So shally.card with 2 R's.co. And that's got a link to, my company, my email, all the other stuff. You want to connect on LinkedIn, et cetera. It's easier than trying to find me on LinkedIn and find me on Facebook, whatever. I believe that if you want to connect with me, I should connect with you in the channel that you prefer. I shouldn't be forcing you to a particular social media. So go to shally.card.co and you'll find different ways to contact me.
That's perfect. And as we close, just again, I know that you think I'm flattering you, but I'm really not. I, as a talent leader who has been the recipient of much of the output of your training in my employees and in my team, I thank you for all you have done for our industry, and I cannot wait to talk to you again.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels good to hear that. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Until next time, thank you, everybody. We will have Shally again.